Alright, so I figured we'd take a minute and kind of look over the major differences between what Xrd offered back when it, I guess, reached its peak at Rev 2 versus the now Strive beta, and hopefully see if there's things that can be improved upon, things that can be tweaked in the future, and things that really they've been doing a great job with and hopefully stay into the final version of the game. So the first thing I wanted to kind of talk about is the match progression. Now that's regarding the general way from selecting your characters to getting your intros to actually playing the game, having your match, finish, and then turn over into another match. I figured that was the first thing we should really focus on. Now, one of the main differences I've found in this, obviously, is the HUD, but I want to focus on that in a second section. So let's focus mostly on how the progression of a match goes first. So when talking about character select screens, obviously the amount of accessibility is important. One of the things that Xrd did great was not only giving you, immediate access to what color do you want technical or stylish, what stage do you want to play on, and what music do you want to play, but it also gave that option in a way that was very systematic. So 1, 2, 3, 4, like it was the same pace, you did it quick every time that was available, and then you had your characters, you had your color. There was no questioning like what button I have to press to get a color or any of that. And that's something that ArcSys has put into all their games since doing it in Guilty Gear. I believe the first Xrd Sign was the first one to do it, and it's been great since. So I'm really happy to see that is not only the color aspect is a factor in Strive, but also I'm assuming they'll probably have the other options as well, since they do have a button configure option right on the character select screen. That's purely aesthetic, but I find it really disheartening that this screen right here that you're seeing for Xrd was such a bombastic and interesting character versus character screen, while the one in Strive is literally just an eagle flying in the distance. I'm not sure if that's going to change stage by stage or match by match, but I really hope that they add some variation to it, because it's really kind of bland. Even the music isn't really that exciting. Of course, we're more interested though in the character introductions. Now, watch this. Soul and Kai's introduction right here is super exciting, super intense. There's an excitement to it before you even start pressing buttons, and this goes all the way back to the very first Guilty Gear. They had always done this. Now, there's not to say that there's not an exciting factor to the tension in this scene, because camera-wise it's really interesting, but I find it's also a little weird that it has its own music, it's very subtle, and that there's not really the energy there. Now, maybe this is just between these two characters, but from what I've seen of the other characters, even the more exciting ones, this is still a more subtle approach to the introduction. Now, obviously, this match is a best of 5, essentially. That's just because I like to play Xrd that way. I like my matches longer, and I guess there's a point to that. That I'll discuss now. So, the interesting thing about Guilty Gear Xrd, and honestly one of the reasons I love Guilty Gear so much versus other games like Street Fighter and DOA and even Tekken and a bunch of other games, is the damage pool. Like, they give you so much health in Guilty Gear that even when you do crazy ass combos and super high damage, you don't see a complete shutout. You don't see a lot of issues with someone just being decimated round after round, because there's a lot of opportunities for the other person to come back. Now, this is primarily because the damage pools, no matter how high they get, only maybe do up to a quarter of a person's health before they're given an option to come back with a counter or do some sort of thing to systematically return the favor without actually doing something on their own, like a burst attack or a Roman cancel that can basically give them an option out. This is really interesting to me because it makes for a more intense match, it makes for a more exciting match, and if you don't have that option to be able to, pull out multiple supers or multiple, specials and really enjoy the fight and enjoy doing this cool stuff, there's less incentive to actually do it, and you kind of just live in the world of footsies for the most part. Footsies is fun. Footsies isn't the worst thing, especially if it's done right and it's really exciting to look at. Like, for instance, Granblue, and I think Strive to a degree, have really interesting footsies. But I mean, if you're gonna put all these really cool moves that everyone wants to try out in the game, give them time to do it, you know? I always hate the idea that the last ditch attack that you have is the only cool one in most games. Like, fucking I hate that in Mortal Kombat and you know, in games like BlazBlue or BB Tag. You know, it's not appealing to me. If I have a cool move, if I have a cool move enough meter to do it, I wanna fucking do it. End of story. So let me do it. You know, don't give me a third round only 25% health sort of limit. Just let me decimate the guy. I mean, we're talking about a game that has instant kills. If nothing else, this game should at least let you do it. So give me some time to like play around and like with my opponent and really kind of show off. Since I have the advantage, I'd like to be able to show some cool moves and maybe even come back from something if I have enough meter to do it. I don't want to get punched and kicked to death by someone who just got 2 strings on me, you know? It's lame. I just don't see the appeal to it. Now, so if you look at Xrd, obviously the exciting moves that Kai can do and Soul can do really kind of is part of the charm of Guilty Gear. The backgrounds and the contrast between the characters' actions against each other and the pacing and all that, it's par for the course with Guilty Gear. They've mastered the art of making these games because it's one of their original fighting games and they've gotten so good at it. So you can't really say for a second that it's not going to be impressive. And I think in many ways, in most ways honestly, Strive excels in that. Strive really feels like a perfect evolution to the visual aspect of these fighting characters, because I mean, if you look at it, you see, you know, I did my best to make sure that Kai and in many other cases, most of the other characters were pulling off similar moves. Obviously their movesets and their kits are a little different, but they have their go-tos, you know. Kai's Coconuts and his Sacred Edge and his Red Lightning are all still there, they're all the same. They haven't input instant kills yet, so I'm not sure how those are going to look, but I have heard that they are going to be in the game, they're just not in the beta, so who knows, we'll see what happens. But as you can see, you know, in the amount of time it took for that first match in Xrd to go, I think this match right here, nearing the end of it, probably could have been put in maybe a third of the time. And you know, every match is different. I'm not saying that this is a standard thing, but you can feel it. You really can feel it, especially playing them back to back like I did. You can feel how much time it takes for a match to end, or a round in a match. I should say a round in a match takes much more time in Xrd, because even with your best combos, you know, pulling dusts and doing air combos and knocking them around and doing specials and, you know, whatever you need to finish your opponent, you still have to spend more time in the game. And it's really odd that that's the case with a game that is less neutral than Strive. Strive seems like it's way more neutral, probably taking hints from Granblue, probably taking some hints from games like Street Fighter, and I just found that very fascinating. Another thing that's interesting here is the end screens. You know, nothing special about the end screens in Xrd. I think they're pretty simple. But you know, you're not signing up for much. I think that they definitely figured out how to finish a match much more interestingly in Strive, and I do like that. Plus, they give you like these really nice battle parameters and things, like how you played and how your match went. I think that's really cool. They do give you like some ranking stuff in Xrd, like you get bonus points and extra money and stuff from how you did in like the arcade modes, but you never got that in the multiplayer. But I guess technically you could use that as a way to kind of gauge how well you played, but I think it's a little more obvious in this version. So now let's talk more about the HUD. If you look at this right here, there's no question what this game is. Xrd Rev 2 had a pretty thick roster, but it makes all the room for you to see the faces of the characters, see who you're choosing, you know, and then there's ample room for like choosing all of your little, you know, stages and music and stuff without ever obscuring any of the faces of the characters on the character select screen. I mean, even Chip there, like you can still see most of his face. And I don't know, it's like a work of art really. It's so Guilty Gear. The gears in the background, the reds and oranges and rustic gear, like metals and all that. It feels very rock, it feels very metal, but it also feels very rustic, and that is Guilty Gear's whole aesthetic. It always has been. Guilty Gear's been around since like 97. It's an old ass game, but it's always been known to have the same like grungy rock aesthetic, because that's what makes it so interesting on a music level, on a character design level, and on a thematic level. And this character select screen really does send that home. Now, can I say the same about Strives? Absolutely not. It almost takes all the beauty and significance of what Xrd did and just completely removes it entirely. There's a nice bit of character display, and I do definitely like the idea of categorizing the characters, showing it, you know, how easy or difficult they are to play, giving them very specific explanations as to what kind of character they are mechanically, but it's like there was no actual thought put into the visual aspect of it, like the chains and the gears and all of the style that is Guilty Gear is just missing. And it wouldn't be that big of an issue if it wasn't for the fact that in match it's the exact same way. You have basically the little spray stamp over the timer. You have the little bits of like the name font that's used during the versus screen. But, and I guess when you do counters as well, yeah. But beyond that, it's like, I guess the gears that you see turning on your tension meter, and that's it. There's like, everything here kind of feels like it's a generically used UI that doesn't really scream Guilty Gear in any particular way. And it's not even that it's like bad. It's minimalist, and maybe that's what they were going for, just trying to get it as much out of the way as possible. And if that was the plan, I'm not against it. I like the idea of minimalist, showing as much screen as possible, because it creates a better stage for the actual action that's happening. But when you're so used to a game series that gives you so much in terms of style and grungy rock metal aesthetics, this seems like bare bones. It seems like it's like the weakest effort they could have made. I don't like it. I can't say I'm really for it, especially with how phenomenal the rest of the game looks. I mean, the actual actions, like the slow-mo, the camera work, everything that happens between the two characters and the action itself, like what you're controlling, it looks spectacular. Not only is it the most beautiful game Guilty Gear's ever produced, probably it's the most beautiful game Arxis has ever produced. Best fighting game visually I've ever seen. Not only were they able to create an engine graphically that really perfectly encapsulates Ishiwatari's artwork into a 3D environment, but oh my god, the fidelity on this game is phenomenal. And when it does hit that 60 frames, you feel it. You know how good this game looks. It is gorgeous. I mean, I remember back in like, God, when was it? It was so many years ago. I can't put a number on it. I don't know. But back when they first showed the teaser for Xrd Sign, and everyone was like, "Wow, it was perfectly." They perfectly figured out how to make a 3D game look like a 2D game, and keep all of the heart of the sprites and the sprite work that was in the original Guilty Gears up to like Accent Core, and made it this wonderful idea of like, you know, sprite and animation pacing from back then, while keeping the 3D design of everything so clean and perfect. I mean, they figured it out, and it blew everybody away to the point where it became a sort of new standard, and it's why ArcSys is so popular and successful right now. So to think they were able to outdo themselves is, it's crazy. It's crazy. I had the same feeling seeing the Strive trailer for the first time, back when it was Guilty Gear 2020, that I did when I first saw the first Xrd trailer. It's crazy how good these games are looking. And I mean, playing so much Granblue recently, like Granblue is really good looking too, but Strive beats it out even then. So I guess that's even more why it's so disheartening to see how weak the UI is. There's little things like, for instance, when you're pushing the tension gauge and you get positive edge during a match, and like the little arrows pop up on your tension gauge showing that you're powering up a bit. That's cool. There's the idea that your face is moving with your meter as it drops. So it's like an immediate reaction, like, oh, my health is going down, it's going lower. That's alright. But, I mean, it's no more obvious than on the character select screen just how, like, what? These teals and purples and all these, like, I don't know, it's like indie dev stuff that you don't expect from them, from ArcSys. I guess my biggest hope is that when the time comes, we get a really cool look at what the real intended UI and HUD is going to be, because right now this isn't cutting it. Now, on this Xrd footage, you're going to see a perfect comparison of the actual match HUD, right? Everything from like the fiery, flamey time counter to sort of the meter having its own thing, not just staying one consistent color, but having like almost like a misty kind of lava look to it. Again, these rustic metals and chains and everything around the character portraits, the custom font used for burst and for the names. Even your tension meter isn't just a meter, it's got like a style to it. I would much rather they just copy paste this UI onto the actual game. It's the UI, it doesn't need to be special. You don't have to make it new every time. But at the same time, you know, don't fix what isn't broken, I guess? They tried to make it so minimalist and unique that they ended up kind of losing its charm. I can't imagine someone that heavily plays Guilty Gear not loving the rock aspect of it and all the heavy metal kind of vibe that Daisuke Iwatari puts into all this stuff. So to see that that's completely missing in the UI, I mean, the whole interface is just cut down to something you could probably put together in Unity in a matter of a day. It's kind of a joke to what ArcSys has in terms of their style and their whole appeal. And I would be comparing it to something else entirely if they were going for a different, more futuristic, cyber-y kind of style, but it doesn't go enough in that direction to make it viable. It's like right in the middle where it stays ambiguous and completely like uninspired, and that's what hurts me in terms of enjoying the look of it. Because when you look at the footage for Xrd, it's not like you don't have enough screen space to see what's going on. There's plenty of space. You know the actions you're accomplishing as a character. You know the actions of the attacks coming at you from your opponent. There's no loss for space. I mean, I could even get into the command issue and the idea of like pulling up your command list and pulling up your menus and stuff, but I think I've harped on this point enough. Aesthetically, the UI is kind of garbage in Strive, and my only hope, really, above anything else, is that they change it for the final version. If this is just for the beta, I'm fine with it. It gets the job done. But I really hope they put some serious style and some serious like creative design on the final version, because it right now it's just nothing but a downgrade. I do like the idea of categorizing the characters. I do like the idea of making them making it obvious how they play, but I just do not like the idea of making them, I don't know, just it's too colorful and bright and generic. There's nothing in it that says Guilty Gear, and that's a shame when every previous game has had something that said it. Something different, mind you, in each game, but still specifically said Guilty Gear. So, my 2 cents on that. By the way, just an addendum, like, yeah, these intros are really cool for Guilty Gear. Like, Axel's probably my favorite, and I'm sure a lot of other characters they introduce later will have some cool ones as well, but they're a little too long. I can't imagine them. I mean, I'm not one for, I have a bit of a pet peeve of people skipping introductions in, like, official matches or online matches, but it is what it is, you know, you deal with it. But this isn't helping when you make your introduction like an hour long. Just a thought. So, I kind of touched on it before, but I think it's really cool how the engine has gotten to a point now where it's still keeping the heart of, you know, the old sprite games, you know, everything back to Missing Link, to Midnight Carnival, to, you know, even when they went 3D with Xrd, like, the charm of playing Guilty Gear, the actual visual style of it, the aesthetics, the characters, the uniqueness of the designs of each attack and how it interacts with another person, that's all there. Hasn't changed. Better than it has ever been, period. Like, they did a good job, and we have to commend them for that. I think this beta did a great job in selling the visuals to me further now that I can look on my own TV in 1080, you know, and watch the characters move in 60 frames per second, you know, instead of just on YouTube. It's great. I'm so excited, more than I have been, to play this game. But one of the things that really surprised me even more than that is just how fun this game is. Like when you play Guilty Gear, especially the old ones. I'm an OG. I've been playing since, God, my first one was X, By Your Side, essentially, was my first one. And when I lived in Japan, I ended up getting Missing Link, or I tried it out for the first time, really loved it, but I also picked up Midnight Carnival, and I think I got Accent Core like right when it came out, roughly, in Japan, because it was in the arcades for a while, and I was just, you know, I was all about it. I love the visuals, I love the style, but obviously, you know, when you're working with pixel art and sprites, it's you do what you can. You can't really make it perfect to the actual visual art style, but I fell in love with Ishiwatari Daisuke's style of creating, you know, illustrations and characters, because it was so unique, especially in Japan, where like everything's basically, you know, your stereotypical manga style. He had a very Western look to it, so I just found it really fascinating how cool his stuff was, especially like that, that grungy metal kind of look to it. But what I also found really cool was the art style of the game, the pixel art, really married with the illustrations very well. Now, Xrd tried. It was a little more anime inspired, you could tell, but, you know, by the time Xrd Rev 2 came out, they pretty much got it. They knew what they were doing, and it was fine. I have nothing against the style. I thought it was actually really dope, but there was definitely a hard contrast, because it felt like the illustrations were trying to cater a little more to the style of the game and the actual engine instead of the other way around. And at the time, that might have been a good choice to kind of marry the two more. I know Daisuke didn't do all the illustration work back then, so it was kind of expected. Now granted, we don't have any finalized illustrations for all the characters. We have some, but in the new engine for Strive, I don't even know if we need it. The engine is so good, it's so accurately representing the character designs and the style that he's put into the games after all these years, that it's like you could just screen capture any of those images like on one of the freeze frames or like the victory sequences, and you're good. Like you're good, dude. It looks great. It looks absolutely phenomenal, and it's hard to say it could be better even, you know, who knows. They really, when it comes to cell shading and 3D modeling, these guys have it in the bag for fighting games. I mean, like I said, Granblue, I've been playing so much Granblue, I don't know, I'm in love with that game for sure, but never would I have suspected that Strive would look this much better. When you're looking at something like this, like with Xrd, this is beautiful. Xrd is gorgeous on its own right. And then you look at like fucking Granblue, and it's like maybe a few steps ahead just because it's a newer game. But I wouldn't necessarily sit here and say it's, you know, significantly an improvement. It's good. It's a newer, better looking game. But then in walks Strive, full hold my beer energy, like 60 frame 1080 fidelity, lighting out its ass, all sorts of crazy camera angles and models that look like they would be used in like a full budgeted, like high-end animation studio film. It's insane. I can't imagine how much it costs to make these models, but God, was it worth it. This game looks absolutely incredible, and all of the particle effects and the, you know, the swipes and the stretches and the classic animation techniques that ArcSys uses to make these games, oh my God, are they paying off better than ever. They were so good in Stride. I can't imagine how characters like even more crazy like Zato 1 or an Eddie or Milia or who knows if Testament or Dizzy are going to get in there. I can't imagine the kind of crazy animations we can expect. By the end of Xrd's life, you know, Dizzy and Answer and Raven, they had amazing animations as well, and the kind of stuff that they were doing with those characters was definitely like, you know, it was the end of its life cycle, so I can't imagine the kind of stuff they'd be throwing at us through Strive. I'm so excited to see it, especially on the competitive level when you start seeing the high-end gameplay. Oh my God, I'm salivating just thinking about it. Getting back to how fun the gameplay is, though, there's something that really fascinated me, and I think I really noticed it when I was playing Faust most of all. When you are trying to do this compos and strings that you would know from, say, Xrd, they don't happen. The kits that these characters are using are completely different, even though some of their moves are the same, act the same, and look the same. Like there's something inherently different about all of the characters and how they move around the screen now. There's a lot of neutral game, and the neutral looks really cool, but it's when you find the correct string or the unique chance to do a Roman cancel into another opportunity that really the gameplay starts to shine through, and you start to find the depth. It's so fun. I remember back when Maximilian dude had talked about this a little bit, but I think it was on the Castle Super Beast podcast. Wooly was kind of breaking down exactly how the game plays when him and Reggie got a chance to get hands on. And now that I've had my hands on the beta as well, I can definitely understand what he meant by saying that, like, the depth is in the gameplay's sort of the underlying content of it. It's fun not just because it's a fighting game and the characters are cool and the moves you do are cool and, you know, you can show off and do strings and stuff. It's fun because it's like every time you try to do something, it's a challenge, but it's a rewarding challenge. Like, it's instant gratification if you pull it off, and that's something that a lot of games don't necessarily do in fighting games. But like, you find that in like Tekken or DOA, you find that more in, or Virtual Fighter, you find it more in 3D fighters that are like more about juggling and stringing. Guilty Gear, for the longest time, was more of a piano game. When you start to think of things like Vampire Savior or Marvel vs. Capcom, or basically any old school Capcom game, Capcom Fighter, they really focused more on, you know, getting your light, heavy, medium string, going into like any sort of special or super that you can get off, and then as soon as you get an opening, trying to get that launcher to get them in the air to start doing a combo that they can't get out of, you know, and then on the reverse, you know, timing your bursts, timing your roaming cancels, whatever to get out of that. Very traditional in that sense, but giving you a lot more options because it was kind of like a conglomerate of all the other games. With Strive, it's almost like a unique experience where every move you do in its own right, and I'm sure this kind of helps out with the damage output, but every move in its own right is a solid option to hurt the opponent. And it doesn't stagger a lot, but when you do get a stagger, the stagger is real, and it gives you a lot of time to do something else. Certain moves do not string, certain moves do. You have a lot of moves, so you just gotta figure out which ones work and which ones don't. But when you do it, my god, does it feel good. Especially when you get that, like, that really good super into a Roman cancel, and then you set up another option while your super is still going, and you start like another combo or a string, and then maybe a dust or something. Like, when you start moving the opponent around the room in such a way, and me, I love playing zone characters like Venom, so I'm really excited for that opportunity that might arise from taking control of the places you aren't located at the moment. But it's interesting because not only does the system mechanically reward you for actually pulling off these moves, but then the new counter system, the positive edge system of being able to, you know, wall break people and get them into new areas while getting an extension on your tension so you can do more cool moves. These things are really fun to try and do because they're not easy, but they're also like not so difficult that you know, a newcomer can't do it. It's part of the game mechanics, and the more you learn the game, the easier it becomes, and the better you get at it. And it's just, it's so deep because there's so many mechanics on that side of the game now, and not so much on just how do I play this character. I think they were kind of going in that direction with Xrd, by streamlining certain moves and things to be more accessible, but they kept so much of the legacy move sets and gameplay mechanics that they didn't really invest in it too much. I think this was what they were specifically talking about when they said, now we want to try and reinvent the wheel entirely and make this game completely different, and some people might not like it. I know for me, it's something I love, but I can definitely tell you that, like, it's going to be a hard sell for some people who I know love Guilty Gear to get into Strive because of that. But I would say try it out. There's something about this that it's different and it's unique, but not so different that you can't play it. It's definitely something worth experimenting with for a little. You know, if you do it long enough and you still don't feel like you're gaining any traction, maybe this isn't the game for you. Maybe you should go back to Rev 2 or even on Accent Core or something. But I have a feeling most people are gonna really enjoy Strive, because it's like a nice balance of what people love about Guilty Gear mixed with the more neutral focused games that are coming out, like Gramble, like I guess you could say something like BB Tag, which isn't really super neutral focused, but it has like some aspects of that. And then, you know, the classics like Street Fighter and whatnot. So, in closing, obviously I think I spent too much time on this, and I really want to show off some of the amazing footage that I've been getting, especially now that the beta's opened up and I'm able to actually play real people. Something that I want more than anything is more moves. Obviously, we know more characters coming for the roster. We know there's going to be instant kills in the game, but I'd like to see more specials. I think most characters have 2 to 1. It was actually more like 3 to 2 back in Xrd days, and even more so with Rev 2 and Revelator. I also want to see, you know, hopefully some legacy characters that aren't just from Missing Link. You know, I'd like to see Cliff, of course. I want to see Biken, but I also want to see, you know, some of those by your side characters like Testament or Dizzy, or more so I guess Midnight Carnival characters like Eno and Bridget. And oh my god, I'd love to see Bridget come back because she was such a unique character back then. Whatever. There's also some interest in seeing a character like Leo come back. I'd like to see maybe some of the Valentines. But if they don't come in, and if we don't get the characters from Xrd, at the very least I'd like to see the Midnight Carnival characters like Eno, Jam, Dizzy. Bring back ABBA, please. You know, there's demand for those characters. If we did get any post characters like that, I want Answer and Raven. I want Sin. I want the characters that made a good impression when they came back and people love to play. I mean, those characters, if anything, Raven should be in just because he's a legacy character in his own right. He's not necessarily been playable for a very long time, but he was a character back in, you know, that we knew about back in By Your Side. He was that man's right hand back when Eno first showed up. He's been around. Raven's not a new concept. He's just a new character to play. So having him back in would be great. If we get characters like Eno as well. Maybe we can see some more story elements of, you know, what this game has to offer in the continuity of Guilty Gear, but I'm not crying over it. I'm happy to see what happens, but it's more of a curiosity than a necessity, because I think Xrd Rev 2 had a really good ending. For the chaos that is the Guilty Gear series and the lore. I'm a lore head, so I'm not necessarily too worried about it. Appeasing everyone, I'm just curious, you know. Fighting game stories are just so wacky. I also, obviously I want to see the UI get fixed up. I want to see some tweaks to the presentation, the fonts they chose, but I'm not too worried about it being a case, because there's so much uproar about it. People are complaining so much. I think they're gonna get the picture. I'm not the only one that's voicing my concerns here. I just hope that they take them to heart and actually, you know, do go further with it, because That's the biggest weak spot in my opinion. Everything else here is phenomenal. The gameplay's phenomenal. The visuals are phenomenal. So the game seems pretty optimized. Granted, the beta only has like 6 characters in it, but still, seven characters. And that's cool. But hopefully, when they add the rest of the roster, you know, it still stays just as smooth, just as optimized. Because the downtime in this game is super low. Like, as much as I talk about the character select screen and like the UI and everything, you really don't have to spend a lot of time in there. You can jump into the game in like seconds, and imagine running this game on PS5 dude, it'll be non-stop gameplay. That's something that we haven't had since like the days of like probably Street Fighter Alpha 2, maybe Vampire Savior. Yeah, Vampire Savior was pretty good with that. Every other game I can think of from back then is like not too shabby, but you know, obviously as the games got more graphically complex, the gameplay took longer to get to between matches, so it is what it is. And I'm not just talking about loading up the UIs, I'm talking about actually like getting into the match during your loading screens, you know. Which is why I think that Eagle's a little bland. You could actually fix that up and make it a little more interesting if you gotta sit there that long and watch it. It's not a long wait, but it's a wait. It's probably one of the shortest waits I've ever seen in a fighting game in the modern era, but it's still a wait. And if we gotta wait, just make it an interesting wait. Please, God, make it interesting. But yeah, I mean, I'm not much sure, not much else I can really say about it. The game is phenomenal so far. I'm excited to see what comes from the actual release, or even an open beta. I think it's going to be in a couple tournaments soon. I'm excited. This game, I was hyped at it on the announcement, so to see that it plays this well, and that I have no complaints for the gameplay, I'm hype. My only complaints are the damage and the UI. And I think the damage thing can easily be a matter of just like put an option in there to kind of mitigate the damage or increase people's defense against it or whatever, just to make longer matches. You know, if I have to make my matches, you know, 5 best out of 5 or 5 on 5 or whatever, then I'll do it. But I think it'd just be easier just to put down some of the damage amounts, because it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. I'm really excited to especially play Faust, because I used to main Faust and Axel a lot, and both of them look really fun in this game, but Faust is like, oh my god, Faust is so cool. He is so cool now, way cooler than he's ever been. And he's always pretty cool. So, yeah, next video I release is gonna be a bit more focused on just gameplay, no commentary. It's going to be purely just like matches that I've gotten into since the beta opened up, and it should be fun. So, and you guys will get to hear some of the music and audio quality in the game, which I think is pretty cool. I think it's good. It's very Guilty Gear. I didn't mention much on the music because I think the music is, most people know what to expect because it's been in all the trailers. So yeah, so I'll leave it at that, and we'll see each other next time. Thanks.